to the Gray is for Sweatpants podcast. It is Relationship Wednesday, and this is where we are going to go through my stories, your stories, all the good stuff. But since it's early on the podcast, I think it's only fitting that we go over my first serious long-term relationship. That's right. We're talking about the 10-year extravaganza that took me from college and ultimately to nothing. So, where do we start? I guess we'll start at the beginning. Having a little bit of matcha tea. I've just been getting over COVID, so hopefully I have a little bit more sultry to my voice. That'd be nice. So anyway, this relationship started in college, and it's a funny story, the way that we met. Basically, when you go to college, everybody starts from square one. And I had a lot of kids I went to high school with that also went to the college I went to. And a lot of them I was cool with, but there was a few I weren't, but it didn't matter because now we're in college. Now it's time to start over. So that's what we did. We all started over. And there was this one friend, we were actually close neighbors. So we decided to rekindle our friendship. I wasn't too keen on it, but that's fine. So we'll call this kid Mike. So Mike and I, we start hanging out now that we're in college. We live relatively close to each other. And one day he comes up to me, tells me he met this most beautiful girl he's ever seen. I said, that's great, man. It's wonderful. There's a lot of beautiful girls here. You see, at this time I had no aspirations to be in a relationship. I could care less. I was in college. I wanted to be free. I really didn't have any identity, and I hadn't really built up any monogamy, I guess, in myself. I had a couple relationships prior, but who knew? So anyway, I end up going out with his roommate one night. We run into a couple of girls. One of them was very attractive. I said, oh, this is great. So we hop onto a bus. We head off campus. That's where all the good parties were. On the way up there, we're bullshitting. We're having a good time. I turn to her. I say, hey, listen, there's going to be a lot of guys there, and if you ever need an out from a guy, you can just tell them that we're together. That's fine. I'll come over. I'll play the whole bit. We'll call it a day. It's all good. She's like, oh, yeah? She's like, oh, okay, sure. So we go to this party, and we end up hanging out there. I end up walking into one of these apartments, grabbing some beer, walking out, because, I was a tough guy back then. Just careless. Such a jerk. It's surprising how far I've come. Anyway, so, later on in the night, we kind of just get down to it, and I'm like, this whole me being your boyfriend thing, if it is going to work and it's going to be your out, we should probably make it a little bit more believable. She's like, what do you mean by that? I said, you should probably just give me a kiss. That way we can really sell it. So, we end up making out. That was the start to our relationship. So, the fun fact about this was when Mike finally showed up, well, the girl that I had just made out with was the girl he had prior be talking about. What a story. What a story. Of course it was. And, that made it a little bit weird in the beginning because I didn't know where to really stand. He wasn't really a great friend to me, so I didn't really have any loyalty. I mean, if this was any other person who didn't, completely disregard me in high school, because we were really good friends in high school, but then, we just weren't. So regardless, me and my first love start dating. And our college relationship was just a whirlwind of getting drunk, fighting, and having sex. And like any college guy, you're like, well, I'm banging this hot girl. This is amazing. That's all that matters, right? You're not looking at the reality of it or the viability long term. As a college guy, she didn't really care about getting married, having kids. That was kind of her outlook. And when you're 20, or I guess at that time I was 18, when you're an 18-year-old kid, you're like, oh, she doesn't want to have kids. She doesn't want to get married. Jackpot. Oh, if I could go back and talk to myself then. So, anyway, we actually broke up the final year in college. We did not live together our senior year. We lived together our junior year, and there was an incident where we both were pretty drunk, which is going to become a theme, at least one-sided in this relationship down the line. But we had gotten into a little tiff, and I said, I'm going to leave, let you cool off. So there had been a string of break-ins in our apartment complex. So when I had walked out of our apartment and she had chased me to cuss me out and then to throw something at me, little did we both know there were two police officers canvassing our apartment complex who watched her throw a water bottle at me and hit me in the head, because obviously I was a little bit tipsy myself. I wasn't able to defend myself. So it hits me in the face. They arrest her. She goes to jail. The next day I had to show up to court and tell the judge that I am not, in fact, fearful for my life, and there's no charges that need to be put against her, but it was just an unfortunate moment. And after that, she sort of blamed me for her going to jail, because it was my fault that she threw something at me. Now, looking back, this probably should have been the sign that the way this was going wasn't for the long term. But like I said, young, dumb, who cares? Not looking long term. You're taking it year by year, which eventually is going to lead me to 10 years. But right now we're only in year 3. So we don't live together our senior year. We kind of did our own thing, to tell you the truth. And after about a whole year of that, we graduate. And it isn't until I am coming back from a graduation party. One of my really good friends lived in New Jersey, and this girl was from New York. And for whatever the reason was, I swung by to see her in New York. We had gotten back in touch. I think the two of us were like, wow, we're really upset we didn't spend more time together our senior year. Let's see how it goes. So then we started kind of talking, and it really was like, there was something special there. It was a juvenile love for sure, but there was something strong. I mean, there was no doubt the two of us loved each other, and there's no doubt that there was anything going to kind of break the bond that we had, at least from the outside world. What was going to destroy us was going to come from the inside. That eventually did come. So we start talking again, and we decide, hey, you know what? Let's both move to New York City. She wanted to go to college, to get her master's, double master's there, and I wanted to be an actor. Regardless, we both moved to New York City. I worked for a little bit over that summer, really didn't have that much money, but I rented us, that we were splitting, a beautiful high-rise luxury apartment right in Hell's Kitchen, 43rd and 11th, Riverbank West is where we lived. And it was amazing. I mean, that place was stellar. We had a lot of fun in the beginning. We both were just hustling. We were just doing our thing, active. Everything was great. One day, while we were there, her family shows up. They ring the bell, and they're like, hey, we're here. Can we come up? Now, one thing I knew about her mother is that she hated New York City. They were from upstate New York, probably about an hour north, so I guess it's not really upstate if you're whatever. We don't need to argue about that. I knew something was up. And a little bit of backstory. Her mom and dad didn't live together all the time. Her dad was a big timer in the Caribbean. So he had this big house in Jamaica. He was actually living a double life there. And he had been doing that for a long time. The thing about that double life is he had no qualm about showing that double life to his children, but then strong-arming them to not tell their mother. This really ate up my ex-girlfriend incredibly. Let's call her Ashley. We'll call her Ashley. It's not her name. We're going to call her Ashley. This really ate Ashley up, to the point where her and her father had a really big falling out, and they had just been starting to come around because her father had just told her mother what was going on, and they were sort of working through it. So they were on their path to bettering themselves relationship-wise. And then her family, her mom, her brother, her sister show up to our apartment in New York City, and they drop the bomb. Her father had been murdered in Jamaica. And we don't need to get into it, but it was a hit. He was shot 3 times, the head, the chest, and the dick. And yeah, couldn't believe it. And she was distraught, and it was a ruining moment. And honestly, this was the beginning of the end. I think, for us. Even though this was year 4 of us, or year 5 of us being together, and we went for 5 more years. So yeah, that happened. That's tough. And we could talk all day about the ins and outs of that. But Ashley was very certain she knew who it was, and it was one of his business partners. We don't need to get into the details, but she became very sadistic against this person and just started drinking even more. And we were drinkers. I mean, she was probably 105 pounds, soaking wet, blonde hair, blue eyes, but she was a true Irish girl. She could drink me under the table, and I can drink. So yeah, things start getting bad. And to put it in perspective, there was a night she started working at a bar, and the bars in New York City, they don't close until 4 in the morning, so it was pretty regular for her to show up 6:30 in the morning, 7 a.m. And I was a big golfer, still am, but I had a country club membership just north of the city, and I used to leave around 6:37 to go get there to be one of the first times out, to get back in the city by noon so that I could have still a half a day of work. So there was one morning where I woke up and she wasn't home. And I was like, well, maybe she had a really late night. They do like to drink and party pretty hard. So, it wasn't out of the blue. But anyway, she does show up. When Ashley does eventually show up, she's got a welt the size of a golf ball just above her eye. Her orbital for sure has been broken. And I'm like, what the hell happened? I'm freaking out. Now, she's also 3 sheets to the wind, so she can't put together a sentence. So as I'm sitting there trying to put together what happened, she can't even tell me. She's not even here, so I'm freaking out. Does she have brain damage? Because she can't, put together a sentence. I don't know what to do. So I eventually call 911, take her to the hospital. Had to fight her to get her to go to the hospital because she didn't want to. Get to the hospital. I don't know if you've ever taken a woman with a bruise on the face to ER, but they essentially kick you out. They assume the worst. She gets checked out. Come to find out that she decided to just get out of her cab on the way home because she didn't like the guy that was driving her. And then she just put her hood up, put her ear pods in, and someone tried to jump her. But yeah, that's sort of how that one goes. And it's a quirky thing because when I drink, when I start to get really drunk, I pass out. I go to sleep. I've run into a few people like her that drink to a place where they black out, but they continue to be able to function. I mean, they start talking with different sentence structure, and they definitely lose a sense of themselves, but they're still functioning. It's almost like they're a zombie, but themselves. It's a very weird thing. It's a phenomenon, but this is what she did. So she would get to a point where she had no idea what she was doing, and yet she was still doing. So yeah, so things weren't really doing great in New York. Needless to say, the acting thing was doing well, so I was like, I think we should move to LA. My mindset in this was, maybe if I get her away from New York, the bother of this place, the remembrance of this place, will get her away from all of this. She also had a pretty bad experience as a younger girl when she was in high school, way before I met her, where she snuck out to go into the city to go visit some family friends who took advantage of her. So the city as a whole was just nothing good. So we moved to LA. Drive across the country was magical. First get to LA, having a really great time. It's really fun. I thought maybe things were better, but in reality, we were just making different friends and drinking with different people and getting to a point where we're getting comfortable again to really let our demons fly loose. I forgot to mention, I did, after her father passed, I did purchase a dog for us. We had a husky. His name was Bodie. He's amazing. He was this big, giant, brownish red husky. So, we're in LA. And LA was kind of where it started to be eye-opening. It kind of was getting to that point where how much time can you give things to change, right? In this relationship, I was always under the mindset of, she needs me because I lost my father. I know what it's like to go through this. I can save her from this. She needs me. And even though things aren't great, they will be, because love conquers all. When we first moved to LA, we lived in a big house. It's like a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom house with a couple of my buddies that I had met. One couple I worked with, a director and actor, and one of their buddies. We had a 4-bedroom. We shared a bedroom, me and Ashley, and the rest of them had them. After a year, we decided we don't need to be frugal. We're going to get our own place. But one of the guys, Andrew, he couldn't afford his own place, so we got a 2-bedroom, split it 3 ways to help him out. He's a nice kid, and also it was good to help him help out with Bodie. So, it worked out. Now, it was our second place that we had got when the three of us were living together, where it really just kind of all came together that things just weren't going to work out with me and Ashley. And it's really too bad. The drinking continued to compound and create these issues where it was almost just becoming intolerable. I don't want to say embarrassing, but intolerable. I was losing myself to this idea that I couldn't continually believe that love conquered all. There was one time we went out to a bar, and it was a group of us, and everything was cool. And I'm not the kind of guy who watches over my girlfriend when we go out. So me and a buddy went off and played a couple of the games they had and drank, and then she was like hanging out with her friends, and I'd come check in every once in a while. When I got time to go, I came back and I found her sitting at a table with this guy. It turned out to be the manager. I was like, "Hey babe, it's time to go." This man stops me and says, "Who are you?" And I said, "Her boyfriend, don't worry about it." To which he then challenged me. "Oh, why don't you tell me how you guys met?" And basically trying to call my bluff that I was not this woman's boyfriend. And I understand the protection aspect of it, but now she's sitting there completely unaware of what's going on. Because again, she's at this point where she can't even attest that I am her boyfriend. So I nearly get into a fight with this gentleman because it's incredibly insulting, and it almost felt like an ulterior motive, like he was trying to take her home rather than protect her. Regardless, we leave. And the thing about all of these instances is, like, the next day she'd be so compassionate. She was a very loving and sweet girl at all of these other moments. It was just when she would be letting herself drink that really just kind of did it. And I was just at this point now where I was telling her, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't figure life out with these moments of just complete disregard. I feel disrespected. I don't feel honored. I just don't feel like I'm your partner. I understand things have been tough in your drinking, but this can't happen. And I had been telling her this for almost a few years. And honestly, what happens is when you wait it out long enough, I woke up one day and the driving feeling, what we would call love, right? The chemical love that was making me look over all the reality of it, one day it was gone. And one day I just looked at it logically and said, what am I doing? This is not okay. Things haven't changed. So I told her. I said, I have gotten to the point where I no longer can just hold on to this idea that love conquers all, that everything's gonna be okay, and that I can just hang on here and keep doing this. I can't do it. I'm gonna go get my own place. You can keep the apartment, you can keep the car, keep the dog. I'll go find my own way, as I'm the one who's leaving you. I understand that taking care of Bodie is going to be difficult, so if you and Andrew want to get a 2-bedroom, I won't find it weird that the two of you still live together. And then I left. And that was tough. And to tell you the truth, I've continually had to look back on that relationship to understand how it has changed my mindset just in the way that I've taken an outlook on dating. The idea of the scarcity that I would have in dating is very apparent. They say that losing a parent very early on can lead you to hold on to things. And I think that is one of the biggest factors, that even when things weren't great, and it wasn't abusive, and I'm never going to call it that, but it was almost like the ups and downs of drug abuse, where the good was so good, but the bad moments were tearing me apart. And again, I never had a 5-year plan at that point. And this is why I speak. This is why I think that everyone should have a future plan, because you don't want to get caught in this situation. If you don't know what you want in the future, It's very easy to be caught up in a situation that goes nowhere. And then when it comes to the point where it should be somewhere, and you are in fact nowhere, there's nothing you can do. There's no one you can blame but yourself. You know, I got into the relationship not wanting kids, not wanting to get married, but that's because I was a dumb college kid who didn't know any better. Now looking back on it, it's like 10 years. Oh my. I was in that for 10 years and I wasn't married. That should have spoken for itself. But it didn't. I mean, now I know. Now my outlook is much different. And just to wrap up where we are now with our lives, unfortunately my dog Bodhi has passed away. I saw that on Facebook. I still kept up with her throughout the years because of him, just for pictures of him. But shortly after I left her, she started dating our roommate Andrew, which I found out when we were going to a mutual get-together. A friend of ours was putting on a show. So, can men and women be friends? I guess that is a conversation for another podcast. But in my experience, the guy who stuck around for years and then eventually let his foot in the door. But then to just one up that, she's now currently married to her best friend from high school. They live in Colorado. So after all was said and done, 10 years with me, maybe a year with a friend she met through me that lived with us and helped take care of our dog, to then her quote-unquote best friend, who I'd met and never thought was ever a threat, ever a problem. Really nice kid, actually. That's who she married. At the end of the day, it wasn't a waste of time, as much as you might feel that, because it taught me a lot about myself. I don't think I would have moved to New York City and LA in the manner that I did without that relationship. My journey has been really impacted by that relationship, so I don't regret it, because I am where I am because of what I've done, and I'm very happy with where I am. And that's why you shouldn't have regret on past relationships, because you should be able to learn and figure things out. So yeah, that I guess would be chapter 1 of my dating history. Adult Dating 101, that was chapter 1. I'm John Matthew Stelpin. This is Grays for Sweatpants. And I appreciate you coming along. Maybe this story can help you see things that are going on in your life. Or maybe this was just good drive-in radio. Either way, I appreciate you. Until next time.